Hello, dear friends. Hello, Vladislav Eduardovich. Hello. Here again is our Ametista group gathered. Today we wanted to talk about fear. The fear has a very wide spectrum and affects almost all aspects of human's life. A human can make some conclusions, some actions out of fear. These actions can lead to consequences to some, to other, to undesirable ones, and the fear can also be an activator of a human. So, Vladislav Eduardovich, the reason of the fear is happening now not only in our country, but also around the world. It also affects people's choices. It affects their behavior, their actions. What is the first thing that people could be told? What to do and how to think, how to deal with their fears. Ilya Valerievich, I will answer right away, giving you the opportunity to clarify the question, because the way the question is now asked, there should be exactly as many answers as there are individuals currently undergoing life programs on planet Earth. The fear is always individual, but nevertheless there is a classification of fears. What do you want to ask? How does the fear appear? What is it for? Or what is the cause of today's fear of today's humanity? Specify. Because it is a very spectral question. How does the fear appear? How does the fear appear? Request. There is always a request for a fear from a human. Well, to begin with, it should be said that it makes sense to consider fear in three classification positions. The first is ratio phobos, or positive fear, phobos positivum. This is a program connection that is embedded in each program of each individuum undergoing an integrative interactive training program on the planet Gaia. And this kind of influence on the individuum by the Supreme Teacher Service to activate the individuum in the right, that is, the constitutive direction. That is, in the direction of development, which is necessary primary for the individuum himself. And this development is considered in the vertical perspective. That is the development of the Supreme Teacher, the student himself, and in aggregate, in large collective, which we now call the volume of God. The second type of fear is phobos protector. It is also in general a program, but it is also developed by the individuum himself in the process of undergoing the program. Sometimes on the territory of Russia this type of fear is known as wise caution. Because if a person isn't afraid of anything, he either doesn't have the proper level of the intelligence for development in the program, or there are no such people. You can always find some parameter that a person at least is afraid of. That's it, and the third type is phobos negativum, the most destructive type of fear. Of course, it has its own internal classification, but power and quality. These are the fears that are generated by the individuum in the process of the undergoing programs. And such a moment is popularly known as having a moment of weakness. That is, a person connives he doesn't trust neither supreme teachers, nor himself, nor his relatives, nor his perception of life. He thinks that any situations unfolding before him are impossible. That means that I am talking about the fear of the unknown. A person is always afraid of the same thing, the unknown. The unknown, in terms of power, is the difference between the power potentials of the impending situation and the dynamically developing power potential of the individuum for a specific moment period of time. he can develop as in the direction of existentium. That is an increase in power, so in general, degradation is also a kind of development. Therefore, the advice and suggestion are the same. If a person is afraid of something, it is necessary to get the amount of knowledge, which is a power addition to the individual, which will allow the individual at least to equalize the potentials of the situation and his potential. Then such a feeling as fear, which paralyzes actions, paralyzes the psyche, paralyzes the ability to work with energies, pass them liminarily through himself, and create the energy-conscious turbulence. It disappears, and the individual with difficulties, with decisions, with thinking, with development of willpower, passes the situation that he had previously feared. This is a general assessment, but again it is necessary to consider everything individually. Well, the system that we present Amethysta, it is today unique in its kind. It gives the whole range of tools, that is exercises, complexes, hikes, which enable the individual to solve their power tasks and most importantly quality tasks, that is development tasks. That is the answer. Thanks a lot. Well, if we specify the spectrum of fear related to the current global events taking place all over the world, affecting all countries, it would seem that for people this is something beyond. This is an event which every person as if cannot influence, and the fear born in these people may be from helplessness, maybe from something else. Is it true? Yes. Can a human still do something about this fear? Here the nature of this fear is clear. It belongs to the third kind, that is negative fear or fear of unknown. The person doesn't understand what is happening, but I am always afraid to talk about a human as a whole, about a particular individuum. There are as many individuums and personalities as there are people undergoing programs right now. The level of understanding depends on the level of the individual at the level of the human hierarchy. It exists, and it not only distributes personalities by power level, but also by the possibility to be aware of reality. You know that the planet belongs to a positive system of directional development. In order to answer this question more or less competently, it is necessary to give an understanding of what the three systems of directing development are, how they interact and what goals they set. I will name them now. It is a positive system of directional development, it is a neutral system of directional development, and it is a negative system of directional development. And there is no need to divide everything according to outdated parameters into good and evil. There is a general interaction. The accumulator cannot work with two positive terminals. There should be a positive terminal, there should be a negative terminal, and there should be a system or a person that will close this circuit and receive current, that is movement or life. The task of the negative system, and here about half of the representatives are on the planet, I mean in the explicit perspective, that is those who are in physical bodies, their main task is to organize and conduct verification activities for individuals of a positive direction and a neutral direction. Therefore, they create systems that in general check for the possibility of the above-mentioned personalities from a positive and neutral system to realize correctly, to make decisions to fight such a terrible vice as superbia, pigrizia and mendacium, that is, to put it simply, test the ability to develop further. The rejection of a more or less realistic assessment of what is happening now on the planet is essentially a rejection of development. This will have its consequences in the upcoming configurational processes, previously known as a doomsday or higher courts. Therefore, you should try to look for interaction with individuals who have bigger opportunities from the point of view of knowledge, power, and so on. You need to make efforts for development. You need to feel like a constant student regardless of the age of the program that the person is in. You need to learn at the age of 80, 70, 15, and 20 and constantly develop. You know that the scourge of humanity is senile dementia, Alzheimer's syndrome. This suggests, first of all, that the people of our wave of generation didn't bother during their lives such a powerful management structure as the physical brain. Not to mention the fact that even the brain of the etheric body, astral body, mental body, and so on was absolutely not involved. The brain requires training, as does the entire human body, constant training with constantly increasing load. And the knowledge that is offered in the whole world, they in general all pass through the law of the so-called formative factor that is digitized, their knowledge of the past. And nothing develops the percentage of the physical brain so much as new knowledge does. Where does this knowledge come from? A question that we are well aware of, but I think it is a little early to talk about it now in order, so to speak, to give an opportunity to all those who will hear our program to think about what we are talking about now. That is, Roman Sergeyevich, do I understand correctly that no one will be able to sit out? The one who doesn't turn on his head and start searching for a solution? What is his fear? How to act? Doesn't start searching for sources of knowledge, where to develop and what to learn mainly, right? Again, I will remind you that the planet Earth belongs to a positive system of development, and just negative representatives, they act in fact constitutively. They fulfill their duty, they work clearly according to their programs, causing us obstacles, various cataclysms, and so on, everything that happens. But when you talk about positively directed, neutrally directed individuals, you are absolutely right. That is the task of the positively and neutrally directed individuals in the search for new knowledge. You will be surprised, but the task of individuals in general is to understand what is their direction today. People, unfortunately, are not looking for this either. The maximum task is career growth, absolutely forgetting that a personal catastrophe awaits everyone. The program of the physical body will end inevitably. Funny search of pseudoscientists for the immortality of the physical body, they only take away energy, and again are initiated by the negative system. These potentials would need to be invested somewhat in other areas. To maintain the health and good functional condition until the end of the program, this is the task, and to invest in the extension of the activity of the physical body at any cost. Well, this is again initiated by our opponents. In general, that is what we thank them for, because there is a saying in our world, a pike lives in the lake to keep all fish awake. Vladislav Eduardovich, that is in order not to be afraid of living in conditions of the pandemic. That is, it is to know yourself, increase your power through exercise, through knowledge, through understanding who I am. That if I do practice in a collective, then I will have no place for fear. That is, so I can say for myself that there is less and less fear when it dissolves into action, an action aimed specifically at increasing power, an action aimed at solving tasks. And there is no room for fear, so you can get away from fear, or is fear an energy that can be transformed? That is exactly the question, how to live in these conditions, in the conditions of the pandemic, in order not to be afraid of the constant growth of these threats and pressures. This is exactly practicing what we do now in our Amethysta group. I can say for myself that fear is not something that is less and less. It appears different but transforms into an action, and here probably it is, as I understand it, the main thing now that a person needs to pay attention to. And not just thoughtlessly, but consciously do it, understanding what he does and how. Well, who is exactly the person? I have just said that our system doesn't involve the whole of humanity. We don't hide from anyone that there has always been, will be, and is on Earth. This kind of planet is designed for this, the most severe selection for further stages of development. Therefore, again, using the saying, you will not call everyone to heaven. We offer information, offer in accordance with the law of freedom of choice. Those who are ready for it, those who have the intention to develop, to understand what is happening here are welcome. It is not hidden from anyone that about 50% of the generation wave that is here today is in development, half will be decoded. Even more, and many people in general intuitively from other informative sources know about it. Even in religions, such a concept as loss of soul, eternal hell, eternal fire, Gehenna are present. Yes, this is all in the old verbal forms, but nevertheless it has been said and said for a very long time. The process of counter-transformation, that is a disbandment of such a powerful processor as an animarus, or in the old-fashioned way the soul, has a place to be in those periods of time in which we are now. We call them transient or turbulent. They just give the opportunity for the last time those who come during these periods try to prove to the Supreme Teachers their ability to develop further. Therefore, to answer your question, I will say the following. If you destroy fear, you will destroy yourself. Fear is the same process created by the Supreme Teachers as, say, the process of life, the process of love, and other infinite processes. It is also developing in the direction of existentium and in the direction of intertentium, and of course it is transforming. It is enough to apply these three-position classification. These are ratio phobos, ratio protector, and ratio negativa. If you are in general completely from ratio negativa, it is unlikely to get rid of. You will never be able to, so to speak, to part with opponents from the negative system. At all levels of development of the volume of God, this system will be presented. Just as there are three hierarchs in the leadership of the volume, as you know, yes, the leader of the volume is considered to be God of positively directed system, but there is also a leader of the neutral system, which we call not only neutral, but it also includes the Medica system and the Ayudarta system, and also the hierarchy of the negative system, and this is represented in general in such powerful religious trends as Vishnuism, Buddhism, where all this is presented more or less rationally, but then again in the same old forms. Therefore, again, how can a person not be afraid of what is happening? Listen, but the Supreme Teachers send this pandemic one after another now to humanity in order to make humanity properly afraid. And Ilya Valerievich was absolutely right at the beginning of our conversation. This fear should reveal people's reactions, the reactions of animaruses to such a powerful impact. That is, this should have a sobering impact on people. Because, first of all, what industries are now being closed completely on the planet? Industries that are what? Develop signitia. Signitia is the eighth seeing, which in general creates the greatest number of energy depths of the individual. Idleness, useless pastime in restaurants, in empty chatter, taking various pseudo-activating drugs, alcohol, smoking, and so on. That is why this pandemic hit. People need to think about what is wrong with their behavior. Life doesn't fit into going to work and then spending the remaining time in a not fully clear what activities, shouting at football matches, going to dances and so on, song classes. All this is good, but where is the development? Those who are now here in the programs are just the ones which for a certain number of lives passed. They didn't understand their sense of existence, didn't think this is the last opportunity. So we exist, we don't hide, we invite, please, everyone who wants, who is committed to development, whose in general brain and understanding of the picture of the universe already gives the opportunity to take the next step. And the rest who, so to speak, are skeptical about all this or don't even think about it at all, who have priorities in the head, this is an apartment, a cottage, a car, a relatively nice body which they call a wife, and so on. Tough selection, Elena Vitalyevna, tough selection. Let them be afraid of this time, it will affect them more and more seriously. You know that for our planet there are two transitions, two types of transition. This is a soft transition, when in the sixth race there will be gradual movement. That is, the number of people will be gently reduced on the planet, cataclysms will still increase. But in a relatively soft form, that is, there won't be such powerful global integrations or mass deaths. Or the second type of transition, hard, which passed the previous fourth race, when the integration was tough enough. Well, everyone knows the story of Atlantis, but it was not just Atlantis. Atlantis was a small piece of land which was located, say, southwest of present-day Gibraltar. This was a disaster to a quite a large amount of land of that time. The configuration of the continents was somewhat different, so I did say so approximately relative to Gibraltar. Then the ratio of Africa and Europe was also a little different. So let the fear grow. People should look for ways to get on the right path through this fear, because by persuasion and excitation the supreme teachers cannot act, people don't understand. Well, again, the pluses and bonuses of the negative system, they know their work well, as they say in the Ukrainian. I realized, Vladislav Eduardovich, it turns out that the roots of this negative fear are precisely in the fact that a person having not been aware of it, implicitly his soul, his animaros, realizes that the untimely death, which is a fear now in a pandemic, something else, it will not allow you to perform the tasks for which a person came to earth. That is, the soul understands that in Signitia, in this Avaritsa, in Superbia, a person will not have time to realize who he is, why he is here. He will not have time to make up for these energy debts. So this fear comes from the depths of his soul. And the person doesn't understand it. Looks like he is afraid of death, afraid to get sick, something else. But it turns out that the fear has these deep roots that are difficult for a person to understand, and he is afraid of everything. Well, to die, to get sick, not to have time to do something. He is constantly in this race like a squirrel in a wheel, trying to catch up with something. But in fact, he is afraid not to fulfill his program, not to fulfill what he is here for, not to understand who he is or why he is here. Is it right? Elena Vitalyevna, again you are trying to bring our conversation to some average person. Everything is individual. For this purpose there is a science called monumentologia, which allows a mode of a process, which we call adaptive transmutation transpersonal correctoring, namely to give an opportunity to understand the personality, the origins of his fear and so on. But you should already understand, right, that a person, like everything else, acts in relation to the program. The difference is that, for example, you keep forgetting that people are divided according to the directional development systems. That is the norm for negatively directed persons, such as the law of lies. It is not acceptable for us. So again, fear of a representative of a negative system, he will basically be based on the fact that he can lose the benefit, the possible of already existing material goods. This is his fear, he will be afraid of it. Does the pandemic affect this? It affects. Because the negative system, it is primarily called the calculating system, and only then the destructive one. Therefore, they consider the cos and negative representatives too now in general a little out of the rut, because they, well, let's say material goods and opportunities are too much on themselves, which also leads to their debts. As you know, for negatives, as it wouldn't seem paradoxically for our listeners, the greatest and most terrible sin and miscalculation is avaritia, avarice. Calculating man, he is calculating, not greedy. Greedy is a completely different creature. This is a creature that has completely lost the balance of existence. Balance, as you know, is a dynamic concept. Greedy takes everything. And just for himself. A calculating person, even a representative of the negative system of enough high level, he understands that this process will lead to degradation and then to a fatal process that we call regression. He counts exactly how much he is supposed to take, how much to give. If we say about the representative of a neutral system, well, here the spectrum, of course, can be wide. If the person in the process of development has deviated in the direction of benefits, for example, modern doctors, we know a huge number of examples when doctors in general they should be guided by high moral and ethical qualities, but again not without the help of the negative system. The economic or rather the economistic background is created in such a way that doctors are pushed on, so to speak, calculating actions in relation to patients. Is it good or bad? This is also a test. A person always has a choice. The same applies to the Ayudarte salvation system, but there are much more examples of honest, moral service, but this is the specific of their activities. As for the positively directed or system of so-called creative formative development, we see a huge number of examples of degradation, again under the proposed by the negative system techniques and methods. The so-called art on the planet has degraded to the lowest levels. That is why the question is now whether there will be a priority and energy supplied to the positive system. It will be during a soft transition of humanity to the sixth race, or the energy supply will be given to the negative system, which will be engaged in hard transition. Here on mass integration, and our task in general is to try to explain to people what is the use of soft transition. This, of course, will give the opportunity to more people to stay in development, and this is related in general with what you are asking about, the manifestation of fear. These are the program moments. It is conceived by our teachers, supreme teachers. Everything is a little more tough, harsh, realistic, but this makes it bigger, more joyful, and more magnificent than modern religious system imagine. Philosophical systems that reduce understanding of the universe to the astral level, where all are the families, of light families, of darkness, where all love each other, and so on. First of all, eternity, space is a powerful processor system. This is an interaction of energies, where a third law that is a part of the law of congressionalness operates. It is called the law of addition of energy. Modern science, it uses the law of conservation of energy. It is a lie. We are in the conditions of existentium. Even modern scientists have reached the point that the universe, they are already talking about the theory of the field and the universal. That is, there are several universes. We know for sure there are 4 of them. We are in the third in terms of the speed of development, and these universes they are in the mode of existentium, that is, our universe is influencing, that is expanding. If the universe is expanding, naturally all the processes and processors and persons there are in it are expanding too. Try to talk to any banker. Ask him if it is profitable for him to give a loan and not to add an interest rate to it. Not barbaric interest rates that aim to suck out all the energy potential of the borrower, but rational interest rates that make it possible to grow the business and the person himself who took it. And at the same time keep the bank afloat in the mode of rational sufficiency. Rational. There is also the concept of minimum sufficiency, but this is a high art of the economistics. And any banker will answer you that his company bank will not stand such work. It will close, they will fail. So everywhere you will see the law of addition of energy. The law of conservation of energy is a degradation for existential development, not to be confused with international development because it also exists. According to fractality, which is everything, the fractal develops and expands outward and pressing into the depth. It turns out that a person who doesn't perform his tasks. Which person exactly? Well, a person of a positive system, without performing their tasks, takes an energy loan and doesn't return it. It's not he who takes credit, but his supreme teacher, who supplies the whole life of a person, and the person idly uses. Insatiable sex, based on the energy of libidosis, not libido, but libidosis itself, it is this energy transformed into a pathological side. People use the same right and left and don't even think about how this mechanism works. Where it is fed from, people are gluttonous, eating everything and everything, perverting on this topic, not understanding the line where there is the art of cooking and where there is already consumption, constant consumption. A lot of things are being built and made completely unnecessary. That is what we call foam. That is, there is an overspending of energy everywhere and everywhere. Look, for example, at modern shopping centers. With what rationality? Pseudo-rationality, the inner space is used there, and you will see that the costs are huge, and the so-called spaces are minimal. This applies to everything. Look at the speedometers of your cars. On the speedometer you have 180, 200 kilometers an hour, and more advanced, once the parameter is even more. Then look at the limiters of road scenes. You rarely will see 110, 120 kilometers an hour only on the highway, right? Everywhere you will have 60 and 40 kilometers an hour. But the potential spent on the production of the engine and the car itself, which is designed for a speed of 200. And who thought about how much ore has been produced for this business? How many factories have been built and what capacities are involved in this? We have created a huge number of offices and companies that are engaged in essentially speculation, that is, taking one place and resale to another place. And how much does this office consume paper? What is the paper? These are trees that are the lungs of our planet. So everyone, you go in what any industry, processes, phenomena, personalities, where you point it out, we will see a huge energy overrun together, a huge energy overrun. That is why there is this question. Because a soft transition is, so to speak, less energy intensive, more economical. A hard transition means that the humanity will get all the energy back at once, because it is associated with suffering, with pain, and so on. Again, look what is done in the field of armaments, the arms race of defensive and offensive weapons. People don't live long anyway. Current programs. Rarely who lives for up to 100 years, rarely. There are only few people who do it. Those who live up to 90. There is also a little bit of them. Average life expectancy on the planet for about 60 years, and the people put an incredible amount of effort, energy in order to reduce this term. Will normal or more or less intelligible individuals do this? No. Therefore, humanity has brought itself to such a degree of idiocy and insanity. Therefore, the question of a hard or soft transition arises. This is a serious question, no matter how they shrug it off people from this and so on. We always suggest if you are worried about something, you are in doubt about something, visit a quiet cemetery. Go to the maternity hospital if you are allowed to go into the maternity wards. Well, everyone has seen pregnant women, has seen small children. How does it all happen? Where does it come from? Where does it go away? We see only one part of the wave, a small segment, but it appears from somewhere, it is taken from somewhere. Well, we often hear this slogan among people once we live, but we clearly and completely know the law of the supreme teachers, what you ask that they give. If you want to live once, you will finish your life on counter-transformation, because a person who believes that he lives once and that there is nothing further, he turns into a rough consumer, acquiring energy from everywhere, wasting it without even thinking about where it all comes from, where this incredible power comes from. Consumes, 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 even the ability to consume itself. Where did it come from? I think that in secret all the scientists who are still dare to claim that their life was born in a sort of broth from a random combination of some molecules, and there was a protein then from which the creatida was formed, a living cell with a nucleus, and then such a variety of incredible life. No, of course not. A rational person who thinks at least a little will see everywhere the work of thought superior to our current one. And we are not the supreme creation at all. We are the very beginning, that is, we are children. Children from the point of view of development, and even not yet of the school age. This should be well understood and taken up with all the forces of study. We call it the effort ultra, that is super effort, because time is very short. Not many people are capable of such an ultra effort, but we don't hide the fact that all of humanity will not pass on. Therefore, we turn to those who still has the ability to think more or less objectively and use the opportunity to gain knowledge, get methods, have time to develop before integration and bring up at least some results that allow to consider individual animals on the configurational process from the perspective of further development, or as we call serputivity. Thank you very much, Vladislav Eduardovich. Thank you, dear friends, for our conversation today. I think we will meet again soon, and the information that we have heard now is probably more than enough to think about. To think about it properly, to think about a lot of things. Thank you. Yes, and dear friends, we also want to say that those who have any questions, write them, ask. All the contacts will be at the bottom in the caption. We will return to conversations and in particular ask questions that you will leave in the comments below. Thank you all for your attention. See you again. Thank you, Vladislav Eduardovich. Thank you, I appreciate it.